boy's oxygen dropped to 81% on a Tuesday. By Thursday, the 8th specialist had signed the same discharge summary as the other 7. Untreatable by known protocol. His father owned 4 hospitals. None of them could save his son. But the woman sitting on a plastic stool outside Gate 3, the one security had tried to remove 6 times that month, already knew what was killing the boy. She had known for 9 days. What she carried in a brown paper bag was not medicine. It was proof. Kwadwo Mensah Ansah stood in room 414 of Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital in Accra and watched his son breathe. The breathing was wrong. It had been wrong for 43 days. Short, shallow pulls that made the monitors stutter every 8 to 10 seconds. Kofi Mensah Ansah was 9 years old, weighed 26 kilograms, down from 34 in 6 weeks, and had not smiled since March. The room smelled like hand sanitizer, and the faint chemical sweetness of the IV drip that was the only thing keeping Kofi's veins from collapsing. The fluorescent light above the bed had a flicker that the maintenance team had promised to fix 2 weeks ago. Nobody had fixed it. Nobody was fixing anything in this room. Kwadwo had spent $2.3 million. He had flown in specialists from Johannesburg, London, Dubai, and Baltimore. He had chartered a Gulf Stream twice. He had offered Dr. Adu Mensah at the National Cardiothoracic Center a personal retainer of $400,000 a year to take the case full-time. Every one of them had run their panels, ordered their scans, and left with the same answer dressed in different language. We do not know what this is. We cannot treat what we cannot name. Kwadwo was a man who had never once in his adult life heard a problem described as unsolvable. He had spent 33 years converting problems into line items and line items into solutions. But this problem did not have a line item. It had a 9-year-old face, and it was shrinking in front of him, and the money he kept throwing at it kept bouncing back. He did not know it yet, but the answer had been sitting 30 meters from the hospital entrance for 11 years. Kwadwo was not just wealthy, he was infrastructure. Mensah Pharmaceuticals had started as a single clinic in Tema in 1991. His father, Nana Kwame Mensah Ansah, had told him at age 19 that the only wealth that lasts is the kind that makes other people need you. Kwadwo had taken that lesson and run with it. By 2024, the company was the largest private pharmaceutical operation in West Africa, manufacturing generics, distributing across 14 countries, holding exclusive import licenses for 9 patented drugs in Ghana. His name was etched above the west wing of Korle-Bu itself, the Mensah Pediatric Research Wing, funded by a $6 million donation in 2019. And now his son was dying inside a building that carried his name, and the name was doing nothing. Outside Gate 3, on the cracked concrete where the ambulances idled, and the exhaust mixed with the smell of fried plantain from the vendor across the road, Ama Serwa Dagadu sat on a plastic stool she had owned for 14 years. Her wooden tray held bundles of dried root, packets of ground ginger, clusters of prekise tied with raffia, and small bags of moringa wrapped in yesterday's daily graphic. She sold them for 2 to 5 cedis each. On a good day, she made 40 cedis. On most days, 22. On the worst days, the days when the security guards were feeling important, she made nothing at all. She was 73. Her hands were rough from decades of grinding and cutting and carrying. Her back had curved into a permanent lean sometime around 65. Her left knee had stopped cooperating fully in 2021, and on rainy mornings she walked with a rhythm that favored the right side so visibly that strangers sometimes offered her a chair she did not need. The nurses at Gate 3 knew her face. The security guards tolerated her because she never blocked the entrance, and because once, in 2018, she had told a guard named Kweku, Asante, that his daughter's rash was not eczema. It was a reaction to a laundry detergent the girl's skin could not process. She told him which plant to steep and how long. The skin cleared in 9 days. After that, nobody bothered the old woman with the wooden tray. Nobody knew her full name. They called her Auntie Herbs, or sometimes nothing at all. She had been invisible for so long that invisibility had become a kind of shelter. What nobody knew was that she had been taught to read illness the way their machines read blood. Her grandmother, Nana Akosua Dagadu, had been a healer in Kapando, in the Volta region. Not the kind who chanted and burned incense, the kind who kept records. Nana Akosua had maintained a leather-bound ledger for 41 years. Every patient, every symptom, every preparation. Which root, what quantity, how long to boil, when to administer. She recorded outcomes. She cross-referenced plants with seasons, doses with body weight, symptoms with duration. Her ledger was not superstition. It was data, handwritten in ink that faded but never disappeared. Yama had inherited a ledger of symptom records from her grandmother and had spent decades carrying knowledge few believed in. She had learned that speaking up against powerful institutions came at a cost. Still, she came back to the hospital. She always came back. Because this was where the sick people were. She did not know the boy's name. She did not know his father owned the wing he was dying in. But she had seen him carried in 43 days ago. And she had seen the color of his nail beds through the glass doors as they rushed him past. That grayish undertone beneath the brown, the color that meant the organs were struggling. She had seen that color before. On her daughter, the last child she had seen with that color, had died. Amma said nothing, but for the first time in 28 years, memory had begun to feel heavier than silence. But the boy was getting worse. She could see it from the entrance, the increase in specialist visits, the chaplain arriving twice in 1 week, the mother's face each evening when she walked to the car park, aging years in days. And Amma's silence was becoming heavier than the knowledge she carried. What happened next began with 3 CDs and a headache. On a Wednesday evening, a night nurse named Efua Owusu Boateng walked through gate 3 at 6:47 p.m. and bought a ginger root from Amma's tray. They talked the way people talk when one of them is tired and the other is patient. About the heat, about the traffic on the N1 that evening, about the price of tomatoes at Makola Market that had gone up again for the 3rd week running. Ifua mentioned the 4th floor was quiet because the private patient was getting worse. She did not say the name. She did not need to. Amma's hands stopped moving. The bundle of ginger she had been wrapping stayed half-wrapped, the newspaper folded at an angle she would normally never leave. She looked at Afua for a long time, long enough that Afua noticed and stopped talking. The evening call to prayer from a mosque 3 streets away was just beginning. A car horn blared on the main road. The hospital's automatic doors opened and closed as the evening shift filed in. Then Amma asked one question. "Does his blood refuse to thicken?" Afua stared. That symptom, the persistent coagulopathy, was buried in the boys' lab results. It was not discussed in the corridors. It was not in the family briefings. It was a secondary line item that 8 specialists from 4 countries had reviewed and deprioritized because they could not find its cause. It was the kind of detail that only someone reading the full chart would know, or someone who had watched the same thing happen before. How did a woman selling roots at Gate 3 know? In 1971, a government health officer visited Kapando. He watched Nana Akosua treat a child with a fever that had lasted 9 days. He reported her to the district office. She was publicly reprimanded and told that if she continued practicing without a medical license, she would be arrested. She was 62. She had been healing since she was 19. She closed her door that evening and never opened it again for a patient. She died in 1983 with the ledger under her bed. Amma said nothing else. She wrapped the ginger and handed it over. Efua walked into the hospital and did not speak for 20 minutes. How did an herb seller on a plastic stool know the one thing that the finest doctors in 4 countries had treated as a footnote? What happened in the next 48 hours would destroy a pharmaceutical empire and prove that the most expensive education in the world is no match for a grandmother who wrote everything down. Efua went back to the 4th floor at 7:23 p.m. She pulled Kofi's chart from the nursing station and carried it to the break room. She sat under fluorescent light that buzzed every 40 seconds and read every page from the beginning. The coagulopathy was everywhere. Every panel showed it. Platelet function declining week over week in a curve that looked like a staircase going down. Clotting factors diminishing in a pattern that none of the specialists had matched to any known condition. They had tested for hemophilia, A and B, von Willebrand disease, factor V Leiden, antiphospholipid syndrome, and 11 other clotting disorders, all negative. They had tested for leukemia, lymphoma, liver failure, and sepsis, all negative. The boy's blood simply would not hold itself together, and no one with a medical degree could explain why. But Amma had not asked about the diagnosis. She had asked about the behavior. Does his blood refuse to thicken? As if she recognized the pattern, as if she had watched it before. Efua did not sleep. At 6:15 the next morning, she walked out to Gate 3. Amma was already there. Same stool, same tray. She looked at Efua, and something in her face shifted. Not surprise, but recognition. She had been expecting this. "Have you seen this before?" Amma was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Bring me his full blood panel. Not the summary, the full results, every week since he was admitted." What Efua did next could have ended her career. She knew that. She had spent 11 years building a reputation for competence and silence, the 2 things a night nurse needed most in a hospital funded by powerful donors. But she went back inside, logged into the electronic record system, printed 43 days of complete blood work for Kofi Mensah Ansah, placed the pages in a manila envelope tucked inside her lunch bag, and walked back outside. She handed the envelope to Amma at 7:40 a.m. on a concrete ledge next to Gate 3, while 2 ambulances idled 6 meters away, and Kweku Asante watched from the security booth and said nothing. He did not know what was in the envelope, but he knew Amma, and he knew Efua was a serious woman, and he understood that sometimes the most important things in a hospital happen outside the building. Amma opened the folder on her lap. She read the numbers slowly. her finger tracing each line, her lips moving the way they did when she was comparing. She read for 11 minutes. Her face did not change. She absorbed the information the way her grandmother had taught her, with patience, with precision, and without emotion, because emotion clouds the reading, and the reading must be clear. Then she reached into the leather pouch she kept beneath her stool, the one she never opened in front of customers, the one that did not contain herbs for sale. She pulled out a ledger, brown leather, cracked at the spine, soft from decades of handling. The pages were the color of weak tea. The handwriting was small, precise, consistent, the handwriting of a woman who understood that what she recorded might need to be read by someone not yet born. She turned to a section near the back. The heading read, Capando, 1994 to 1996. Children's Trial. Symptoms and Observations. Abena Dagadu had been 14 years old in 1996. Bright, fast, the kind of girl who asked questions that made teachers pause and think before answering. She lived with Amma in a single room on Cleland Road in Jamestown, 3 blocks from the harbor where the fishing boats came in before dawn. But she spent summers in Capando with her great-grandmother's relatives, running through cassava fields and learning plant names she would recite to Amma when she came home, breathless and sunburned and proud. In the summer of 1994, a medical team from Accra had come to the village. They wore white coats and carried clipboards and spoke to the village elders in careful, respectful language about a new blood-clotting agent. They were testing on children between the ages of 10 and 16. Consent forms were signed by village elders, not parents. The forms were in English. Most of the elders could not read English. The team did not offer translation. Abena was given pills every morning for 4 months. She did not complain. She thought she was helping. Below it was a table, columns for patient number, age, date of first symptom, progression, treatment attempted, outcome. She placed the ledger next to the boy's blood panel. She pointed to the first column of the ledger, then to the first column of the blood work, then the second, then the third. The numbers matched, not approximately, not close enough to be coincidence. The platelet decline curves were nearly identical, the same rate of weekly drop, the same brief plateaus before the next fall. The clotting factor deterioration followed the same timeline. The organ involvement, liver, then spleen, then kidneys, appeared in the same sequence, at the same intervals, week by week. Nana Akosua had recorded 7 children, all from the same village, all given the same pills between March and September 1994. All developed identical symptoms within 18 months. Patient 1, female, age 12. Blood thinning began week 6, liver swelling by month 4, survived with permanent kidney damage. Patient 2, male, age 10, same progression, died 14 months after first symptom, weighed 19 kilograms at death. Patient 3, male, age 13, blood and urine by month 3, organ failure by month 9, survived, relocated to Kumasi, lost to follow-up. Patient 4, female, age 11, clotting failure so severe she bled from her gums for 6 weeks straight, survived, never recovered full liver function. Patient 5, male, age 15, mildest case, blood thinning stabilized after 8 months, last confirmed alive in 2019. Patient 6, female, age 16, developed symptoms latest, 22 months after the trial, died within 4 months of onset. Her family left the village and did not return. Patient 7, female, age 14, Abina Dagadu. Blood thinning began week 8, liver by month 5, spleen by month 7, kidneys by month 10. Died May 17th, 1997. Corlebu Teaching Hospital, Ward 6, 21 kilograms. Her mother was holding her hand. Nana Akosua's entry was the longest in the ledger, 3 full pages. The last line read, "I could not save my own great-granddaughter. I write this so that someone, someday, will understand what was done to these children." Amma turned one more page. At the bottom, her grandmother had written the name of the company from the consent form, capital letters, underlined twice. Mensa Medical Research, 14 Independence Avenue, Tama. Efua read the name. She read it again. Her mouth opened slightly and closed. She looked up at the building behind her, at the west wing, at the polished granite and the tall windows and the imported monitoring equipment visible through the glass. She looked at the name etched above the entrance in letters that cost more than Amma would earn in a decade. Mensa Pediatric Research Wing. The same name, the same family, the same blood running through the same story. The company that had tested an unregulated drug on 7 children in a village in the Volta region 30 years ago was the company whose founder's son was now dying from the consequences, passed through genetics, through bloodline, through the one thing that money could not reach, could not rewrite, could not buy its way out of. What the father had buried was now killing his son. Amma closed the ledger. Her hands were steady. Her voice was not. His father's company did this to those children. My daughter was one of them. Whatever was in those pills changed something deep in the blood, something that passed forward. That boy is not sick from something new. He is sick from something old, something his father buried 30 years ago. She looked at Efua. I know how to slow it down. My grandmother treated 2 of the children who survived. She recorded everything she used, every root, every measurement. I memorized that page for Abena, but Abena is gone. The longest pause Efua had ever sat through. A full 15 seconds of nothing. Just 2 women on a concrete ledge outside a hospital, holding the weight of something that had been buried for 3 decades and was now sitting open on an old woman's lap, written in a dead woman's handwriting. That boy does not have to be. Efua sat very still. What she was holding, the folder, the ledger, the connection between a dead girl and a dying boy, was not a medical opinion. It was a detonation waiting for someone to strike the match. She had spent 11 years in nursing. She had never held anything this heavy. Amma opened the treatment page and read her grandmother's preparations with the precision of someone who had rehearsed them for 30 years. Desmodium ascendens, dried leaves, ground to powder, 6 grams per dose, mixed with shea butter and warm water, twice daily, empty stomach, 90 days minimum. The critical agent, Biden's pilosa, fresh leaves, bruised and steeped 40 minutes, 1 cup, 3 times daily, prepared fresh each time, never reheated. Cryptolepis sanguinolenta, root bark, dried 5 days, sliced thin, boiled 25 minutes in 1 liter, reduced by half, 50 milliliters at midday, 60 days. Philanthus amorus, whole plant, shade, dried 3 days, ground. 4 grams in lukewarm water, once daily, 30 days. For the liver, the first organ to swell and the last to heal. Nana Akosua had calibrated for children between 20 and 35 kilograms. She had written in a margin note dated November 1996. The blood responds to the desmodium within 9 days. If it does not respond by day 12, the damage is too deep, but I have not seen it fail in the two who are still alive." Amma closed the ledger. "I have carried this for 30 years. I have not used it because the last time a woman in my family spoke up, they destroyed her. My grandmother died with her door closed and her knowledge locked in a book nobody wanted to read." She looked at the hospital entrance. "But that boy is 9, and I know what 9 looks like when the blood is winning. I watched it once. I will not watch it again and say nothing." Ifua brought the treatment protocol to Dr. Yaw Boateng, head of pediatric care at Korle-Bu, at 9:15 a.m. on Friday. She brought the ledger, the blood panel comparison, and her clinical notes. She placed everything on his desk and stood while he read. Dr. Boateng turned the ledger pages with the care of a man handling something irreplaceable. He placed the 1994 records next to the 2024 blood panels and traced the parallel curves with the cap of his pen. He did not speak for 4 minutes. He recognized the name. Mensa Medical Research. He knew what it became. He understood the implication. Not just for the boy, but for the institution, for the wing that bore the name. For every research grant and partnership Mensa Pharmaceuticals had funded. He was sitting inside a building paid for by the man whose company had tested an unregulated drug on children and erased the evidence. "If this is real," he said, "it changes everything." "It is real," Ifua said. "The question is whether it changes anything before the boy dies." Kwadwo found out by noon. A junior resident mentioned to a colleague that a night nurse had brought an outside herbalist's treatment plan to the head of pediatric care. In a hospital funded by powerful families, information about those families does not travel through official channels. It travels through whispers in stairwells, through careful glances at the coffee station, through phone calls made from bathroom stalls during lunch breaks. The information reached Kwadwo's personal assistant by 11:40 a.m. It reached Kwadwo by 11:52. By 2 p.m., his lawyers, 3 senior partners from Mensa and Corti Associates, had called the hospital director. By 3:30, a cease and desist letter citing unauthorized consultation with an unlicensed practitioner was hand-delivered to Dr. Boateng's office. By 5 o'clock, Ifua was placed on administrative leave pending a formal review. By 6 o'clock, 2 security guards walked to Gate 3 and told Amma she was permanently banned from the grounds. If she returned, the police would be called. Amma packed her tray slowly. She folded her stool, the plastic legs clicking into place the way they had clicked 10,000 times before. She placed the leather pouch inside her bag. She did not argue. She did not plead. She did not cry. She had been through this before. 12 years ago, they had used the same words in the same tone, and she had walked this same road in this same direction, and she had survived it then, and she would survive it now. She walked away from Korle-Bu for what she believed was the last time, her bad knee making her gait uneven on the broken pavement. That night, Kofi's oxygen dropped to 74%. The monitors alarmed 3 times between midnight and 4 a.m. The 8th specialist, reached by phone in London, said there was nothing more to recommend. He was sorry. Kofi's mother, Akosua Mensa Ansa, sat beside his bed and held his hand so tightly the nurse gently repositioned her fingers to protect the IV line. She had not eaten a full meal in 6 days. Her hair, which she always kept in precise locks, was pulled back with a rubber band. She smelled like hospital soap and exhaustion. Quadwo stood in the hallway and made phone calls. He called his lawyers. He called his board. He did not call Dr. Boateng. He did not ask about the ledger. What he knew about that chapter of his company's history was locked in a place he had sealed in 2003, when Mensa Medical Research was quietly dissolved during a restructuring his accountants called routine and his lawyers called necessary. But locked doors only hold when you control every copy of the key. And Quadwo did not know that a woman he had never met had been sitting outside his hospital for 11 years with a key written in her grandmother's handwriting. Dr. Yaw Boateng did not sleep that Friday night. He sat in his office with the door closed and the lights on, and the cease and desist letter on one side of his desk and the ledger on the other. And he understood that these two documents represented two different versions of the rest of his life. One version was safe. One version was right. They were not the same version, and by Saturday morning he would have to choose. By 7 a.m. on Saturday, he had made his decision. He did not consult the hospital director. He did not respond to the cease and desist. He did not call any colleague whose career or salary or research funding depended on the name etched above the West Wing entrance. He filed a mandatory adverse drug event report with the Ghana Health Service, 30 years late. He cited Nana Akosua Dagadu's observations as foundational evidence. He attached the ledger photographs, Kofi's blood work, and his own clinical assessment connecting the boy's symptoms to the documented pattern. He submitted it at 8:47 a.m. on a Saturday, knowing that by Monday, nothing about his professional life would be the same. Then he drove to Jamestown. He found Amma in her one-room house on Cleland Road, 3 blocks from the harbor. He sat across from her at a table with one leg shimmed by folded cardboard. Behind him on the wall hung a framed photograph of Abena, age 12, school uniform, smiling with the gap-toothed confidence of a girl who did not know what was coming. He asked her to come back to Korlebu, not to Gate 3, to the ward. "I will come," she said, "for the boy, not for his father." The treatment was administered under clinical observation beginning Sunday morning. Dr. Boateng oversaw every step personally. Amma prepared every route, measured every gram, timed every steeping with the certainty of a woman performing a ritual she had rehearsed 10,000 times inside her own mind. The ritual of saving a child the way she could not save her own. Her hands did not shake. Her measurements were exact. She worked the way her grandmother had worked. Without hurry, without doubt, with the patience of someone who trusts the process, because the process was tested by someone they trust more than themselves. Within 72 hours, Kofi's platelet function stabilized. The decline that had been accelerating for 7 weeks slowed, then stopped, then reversed by a fraction so small the lab technician ran the test twice to confirm it was real. By day 6, his clotting factors showed measurable improvement for the first time in 50 days. By day 14, his liver enzymes trended toward normal. By day 21, the boy sat up in bed, looked at his mother, and asked for jollof rice. Akosua laughed and cried at the same time, and the sound traveled down the hallway to the nursing station where Efua, reinstated 3 days earlier after Dr. Boateng filed a formal objection to her suspension, sat down and pressed both hands against her face and breathed. The collapse arrived the way real collapses always do. Not with sirens, with paperwork. The adverse event filing triggered a Ghana Food and Drug Authority investigation. Mensa Pharmaceuticals' 1994 trial records had been destroyed. Kwadwo had overseen their shredding personally in 2003 during a corporate restructuring that his accountants called routine and his lawyers called necessary. He had made sure every document, every consent form, every lab report was fed through an industrial shredder in a warehouse in Tama Industrial Area on a Tuesday afternoon while his staff ate lunch. But what he had not known, what no one on his legal team had thought to check, because the filing was so old and so minor that it predated the company's modern record-keeping system, was that the original trial registration still existed. It had been submitted to the Registrar General's Department in 1993 as part of Mensa Medical Research's initial licensing application. The trial was listed by name. The village was identified. The number and ages of the child participants were recorded. The experimental drug compound was described. The documents Kwadwo had built his empire to bury were sitting in a government filing cabinet in a building he had driven past 1,000 times on his way to the office. Filed, indexed, waiting for someone with a reason to look. And then came the detonation. Efua was called to give a statement to the investigators. She brought the ledger, the blood work comparison, her clinical notes. And she brought one more thing. On the night Kwadwo had stormed the ward, the night he had threatened to have Ama removed permanently and Efua fired, Efua's phone had been in her scrub's pocket. The voice memo application had been running. She had activated it 30 seconds before he pushed through the doors because she had learned, in 11 years of nursing in a hospital, funded by men who believed their donations purchased silence, that powerful men who threaten nurses in hallways always deny it later. Always. She had learned to keep her own records. Her grandmother had not been a healer. But Ama's grandmother had taught her something all the same, that the written record, the captured word, is the only thing they cannot take back. The recording was 4 minutes and 11 seconds long. The audio was not perfect. The fabric of her scrubs muffled certain sounds, and the hallway ventilation created a low hum beneath the voices. But Kwadwo Mensa Ansa's words were clear, specific, unmistakable. He said, "That woman and her roots have nothing to do with science. My company spent millions making sure that chapter was closed. I will not have some roadside seller undo what we settled 30 years ago." He said it to intimidate a nurse he considered disposable, in a hallway he considered private, about a woman he considered invisible. It became his confession. The license was suspended within 3 weeks. The investigation expanded to 3 additional trials in rural communities between 1992 and 1998, all involving children, all in villages where consent was handled through elders rather than parents. Kwadwo's board of directors removed him as chairman in a vote that took 12 minutes. Not one member voted to keep him. Not one member looked at him when the result was read. His wife, Akosua, who had married a man she believed built things rather than buried them, who had stood beside him at charity galas and smiled for photographs and believed every word he said about the company's mission to improve healthcare access in West Africa. She took the children to her mother's house in Kumasi and changed her phone number. The housekeeper, who had worked for them for 9 years, said the last thing Akosua said to Kwadwo was 4 words. "I believed in you." She said it quietly. she said at once. She did not wait for a response. Each loss mirrored what he had taken. He took children's health. His child's illness exposed him. He erased names from consent forms. His name was removed from buildings. He silenced a grieving mother. A grieving mother's knowledge saved his son. He spent millions closing a chapter, and a woman with a wooden tray opened it with 7 words. Does his blood refuse to thicken? Stay with me. This story is about to show you what it looks like when the world finally learns to see. 14 months later, Kofi Mensah Ansah ran across the courtyard of a rented house in Aburi Hills and laughed so hard his mother dropped a glass. He was 10 years old, 31 kilograms, and his blood held together the way blood is supposed to. He attended a small school in Aburi, where the teachers knew his name, but not his father's story. He had a best friend named Emmanuel, who was terrible at football, but excellent at making Kofi laugh during assembly. He ate jollof rice 3 times a week and complained it was not enough. He was, by every measure that mattered, a boy. Ama Serwa Dagadu did not become wealthy. She did not receive a settlement or a check or a handshake from a government official. She turned down 3 interview requests and 1 documentary proposal from a production company in London. What she received was something she had stopped believing was possible for a woman like her, in a country that had spent her entire lifetime telling her that what she knew did not count. The Ghana Health Service, in partnership with the University of Ghana School of Pharmacy, established the Nana Akosua Dagadu Traditional Medicine Archive. It was housed in a climate-controlled room on the 2nd floor of the university library. Not large, not flashy, but permanent. The cataloging system was designed by a librarian named Priscilla Tete, who had spent 23 years preserving documents that powerful institutions preferred to forget. Ama's grandmother's ledger was the founding document, digitized, annotated, and made available to researchers across West Africa. For the first time in 60 years, Nana Akosua Dagadu's name was on a wall, in a university building, in capital letters. A brass plaque beneath it read, "She recorded what others dismissed. Her records saved lives." At Korle-Bu, a training program launched, the first in Ghana integrating traditional symptom observation with clinical diagnostics. Dr. Ya Boateng co-directed it alongside a traditional medicine practitioner from the Ashanti region. Ifwa Owusu Boateng was appointed program coordinator. She no longer worked the night shift. She no longer carried other people's secrets in manila envelopes. She taught. She stood before medical students in white coats that still smelled new and said the things she had learned on a concrete ledge outside Gate 3 at 7:40 on a Thursday morning. The person with the answer is not always the person with the degree. Sometimes she is the person you have been walking past for 11 years. And the only thing standing between her knowledge and your patient is your willingness to sit down and listen. A young woman from Kapando named Akua Sefa Dagadu, Ama's grandniece, 22, the first in her family to attend university, enrolled as the program's inaugural graduate student. She carried a new ledger. The cover was brown leather, bought from a market in Ho, chosen because it looked like the one her great-great-grandmother had used. The first page held a photocopy of Nana Akosua's handwriting at the top, a page of symptom observations from 1978, neat and precise and unbroken. Below it, in Akua's own careful hand, she had begun recording. She was not copying her ancestors' work, she was continuing it. Ama made one trip that year she had avoided for 9. She took the bus from Accra to Kapando. 4 hours with a stop in Ho for fuel and fried yam. She found the headstone. Abina Dagadu, 1982 to 1997. Beloved daughter. She placed a folded paper on the stone, the naming certificate for the archive, bearing Nana Akosua's name in government typeface, stamped and sealed and filed in a system that could not be shredded. She did not speak. She sat on the red earth for 40 minutes and let the silence hold what 30 years of words had never been able to carry. Then she took the bus back to Accra. 3 months after the archive opened, Amma walked through Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital, not through Gate 3, not past the ambulances and the cracked concrete and the spot where her plastic stool had worn 2 faint marks into the pavement over 11 years. Not past the vendor who sold fried plantain, not past the place where she had asked 7 words that changed 5 lives. Through the front entrance. Kweku Asante held the glass door open with one hand and called her by her full name. "Good morning, Mame Amma." She nodded. She did not stop. She had somewhere to be for the first time in a very long time. She walked to the archive room on the 2nd floor. It smelled like clean paper and something faintly herbal. The librarian could never identify but never wanted to remove. On the wall, behind glass, hung a photograph she had given the university. Nana Akosua Dagadu, Kapando, 1968. A plant in her right hand, a notebook in her left. Her expression was not smiling. It was certain. The face of a woman who knew exactly what she knew and wrote every word of it down because she understood the writing was the only part they could not take from her. A medical student, young, maybe 23, white coat, still new, stopped at the photograph and turned to Amma. "Who is the woman in the picture?" Amma looked at her grandmother's face for a long time. "She is the reason you will learn to listen before you prescribe." The student nodded slowly, as if receiving something he did not yet fully understand, but would carry until he did. He walked into the archive room. Amma stood alone in the hallway. She walked out of Korle-Bu through the front door. Her hands were empty. Her tray was gone. She did not need it anymore. The thing she had carried for 30 years was never herbs. It was memory. And memory, when it finally finds the right room, does not ask for permission to stay. If the man who buried the truth that killed your daughter was now begging you to save his son, would you save the boy? Or would you let his father live with what you carried for 30 years? Tell me in the comments. I want to read your answer. And if Amma's story stayed with you, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.